Confined space. A confined space is a space of any volume which is not intended as a regular workplace, has restricted means for entry and exit, may have an atmosphere that contains potentially harmful levels of contaminant, may not have a safe oxygen level, may cause engulfment, and is at atmospheric pressure during occupancy. Confined space entry is where a person has their upper body and/or head within a confined space. Identifying a confined space. Mine sites should have a confined space register outlining the location of the confined spaces located on site. The actual confined spaces should also be clearly signposted for easy and immediate identification. Examples of confined spaces. Some of the common examples of confined spaces you may encounter on a mine site include pits, inside the mechanics of mobile or fixed plant, silos, penetrations, pipes, trenches, boilers or bins. This is by no means an exhaustive list. If you're in doubt, speak to your supervisor. Confined space entry. Prior to entering a confined space, you must adhere to the following rules. Complete accredited confined space training. If you haven't completed accredited confined space training, you must not enter a confined space. Complete a risk assessment or JSA on the confined space in its normal operating condition, as well as during the type of work that is to be performed within. Obtain a confined space entry permit and have it approved. Include provision for prompt removal of personnel in an emergency situation in your JSA. Remove all substances likely to present a hazard. No cylinders containing compressed or liquefied gas shall be taken into a confined space, except for cylinders for use with self-contained breathing apparatus. Check that appropriate isolation and danger tag lockout procedures are in place. Arrange for additional permits for high-risk activities, for example, cutting and welding. Standby person. The standby person, also known as the confined space sentry, is a competent person assigned to closely remain outside of the confined space and must remain in continuous communication with, and if practical, observe those inside. The standby person, when necessary, will initiate emergency response procedures, operate and monitor equipment used to ensure safety during entry and work in the confined space. To work as a standby person, you must have completed accredited confined space training. Atmospheric evaluation. When conducting an evaluation of the atmosphere within a confined space, the atmospheric testing should include testing for oxygen content, airborne concentration of flammable contaminants, airborne concentration of potentially harmful contaminants. If you're required to wear respiratory protective equipment, you must be trained in its use. Suitable respiratory protective equipment includes self-contained breathing apparatus or an air-supplied breathing apparatus. Continuous monitoring of the atmosphere should be conducted if the activity is introducing contaminants. Mechanical ventilation. Mechanical ventilation, such as an exhaust fan, should be considered as a primary means of controlling heat, chemical fumes or vapours, flammable gases or vapours, toxic gases or vapours, and oxygen content. Mechanical ventilation equipment must be continuously monitored while the confined space is occupied. Have the controls, including any remote power supply, clearly tagged to guard against unauthorised interference. Have exhaust facilities arranged so that contaminant air removed from the confined space does not present a hazard to persons or equipment, and ensure their exhaust emissions cannot enter the confined space or contaminant air being supplied to the confined space. Confined space, your responsibilities. Ensure you are authorised before entering a confined space, only if you have completed accredited training. Ensure all confined spaces within your work area have been identified and you are aware of these areas. Always complete a risk assessment or JSA before commencing a task. Ensure that the site's confined space permit procedure is clearly understood and followed.